Hello, I'm Jacob Monti, and welcome to The Other Side. I'm a conservative Latino Republican immigration lawyer. That's a mouthful, and it sounds like it's an oxymoron. How can you be a conservative immigration lawyer? Well, yes, Jennifer, there are conservative Republican Latino immigration lawyers, and I'm one of them. My my co-host rather, is Tony Diaz, a Chicano activist, someone who has worked organizing his community, and this is our opportunity to give you all an opportunity to hear from both the left and the right. There's not often a way to convey the different Latino perspectives, and this show will enable you to see the good and the bad. No te creas, Tony. But it's all Latino, and it's the left and the right. What are we going to talk about? Immigration. We have been talking about immigration for a long time now, and the situation has not changed. In fact, Tony, I think it's gotten worse. I never thought I would see it get worse, but it has gotten worse over the last 20 years. The rhetoric has gotten worse, and the question I'm posing is, does either party even want to solve the problem? I mean, both parties seem to get benefits from it. And meanwhile, we have 1 million DACA kids that are in limbo. We have 11 million. Most of the 11 million that are here are hardworking, non-criminals, but yet they're living in fear. The rhetoric coming from the administration is hostile. But are the parties to blame, really? That's the question I'll pose.
And I think the other complication, too, is that the playing field has changed completely. I mean, Donald Trump went into his campaign, yes, calling Mexicans rapists, but also saying that he was going to end identity politics for good. Now, the one thing I'm going to add, though, he didn't end it. He just changed it. And the new identity politics is confusing because we're still trying to figure it out, like you're saying earlier. Like the old identity politics, Latinos, African Americans would demand jobs at the White House and get them. Now that's not the case. So in the new identity politics, this is like the whitest, most male cabinet ever. On the flip side, too, Donald Trump made it his point to go against all the different approaches to immigration. So this is a weird moment where I think if you're caught trying to be too deep and analytical, you're going to get sideswiped by both sides really revving up people and really getting things agitated. Because to me, that's led to these moments where right now, I've never seen this much hostility towards Latinos and Mexican Americans. So here's some quick examples that you've probably heard about on social media or in mainstream news. You had a bozo in Georgia campaigning on a deportation bus, okay? That is just crazy. Yet, of course, the famous video of a lawyer in New York, of all places,
Qué vergüenza.
going off on some folks.
I said it in Spanish.
Going off on some folks for speaking Spanish in New York, of all places. And the most egregious one recently, which is really offensive, you had 2 Latinas in Montana. I did have to look it up on the map. There's a place called, does this place exist? There were 2 Latinas in Montana speaking Spanish, and Border Patrol agents asked her for her papers. And when she asked why, in English, broken English, she said, "Why you ask me for my papers?" And she said, "Because you're speaking Spanish. And we usually don't have people speaking Spanish here." That's what America is looking like. So these are terrible examples, but we can also give policy into it because, for example, you got DACA, which has been rescinded, all those students now that are in limbo. You have, of course, you had different TPS, temporary protected status programs for Asians, Hondurans, Salvadorans, all that's gone as well. So to me, this is a very precarious situation that we're not getting leadership from the top, so the question becomes, how do we function at this at the ground level?
Well, you described the situation, but I'm going to suggest to you that what makes it so complex is that Donald Trump is advocating left-wing progressive policies on the immigration front. He really believes that U.S. workers are being hurt by these immigrant workers, and there's no evidence to support it. But Tony, that idea came from the left. It came from the union left-wing Democratic playbook that immigrants are hurting U.S. workers, and it's a lie. But it's not a Democrat advocating that; it's a Republican president. What do you say to that?
Man, there are about 10 things to 10 things to say to that. I'm just going to let's go with the union factor. How in the world did unions ever support these Republicans who are a bunch of union busters? So for one, recently, the Border Patrol Union, okay, try and make sense of that. There's a Border Patrol Union. They sent a note to Trump and said, hey, Donald. They probably said Donald. Hey, Donald.
He loves them. That's the one union he does love.
They sent them a note and they said, hey, Donnie. Maybe they call him Donnie. You sent the National Guard to help us at the border. They're not helping. They just sent him a note that said, your guys ain't helping. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. And of course, Donald Trump's response typically to news reports that he doesn't like is to call it fake news. So I'm surprised he hasn't called them fake Border Patrol or fake union. But this is yet another example of him taking fantasies and stereotypes and just agitating folks, where his own union that endorsed him is saying it's not working because the National Guard is not trained to work the border. On top of it, what's worse too is you had the past case of Marines who were actually working on the border. They had killed a young immigrant named Ezequiel Hernandez. This was years back. But most recently, you had Border Patrol. They killed a young Latina, Claudia. We hope that she will get justice, her family will get justice. But this was about a week ago on the border. So I bring this all up because, Donald Trump says he's the law and order president. It's not true because he only follows laws when he wants them. He's basically trying to use immigration to get his base all riled up, and nothing really good is happening coming out of it.
Well, I agree with two things that you said. Number one, Donald Trump is listening to the unions, and that's a bad idea. He needs to listen to the business people. Listen to the U.S. Chamber. We have the lowest unemployment rate that we've ever had in the last 20 years. There are no U.S. workers to do these jobs. We need immigrants to do these jobs. Listen to the U.S. Chamber, listen to the National Restaurant Association, listen to the Cato Institute. They will tell you that our economy is doing great, but we need more workers. The other point is demonizing these folks is just wrong. You were right, President Trump, when you singled out MS-13. They're bad hombres. They need to go home. Congratulations on leading on that front. But the vast majority of the immigrants here aren't hardened criminals. They're just busboys and cement finishers and lawn care workers that are trying to do the best they can. They're helping our economy. They're paying more taxes because most of them are using fake Social Security numbers. They're not getting any benefits from it. But yet he is putting all immigrants in the same category as the bad hombres, and that's just wrong.
Well, and he should listen to most Americans. Over 80% think that something should be done to help the DACA folks, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. That seems to be something we could agree on. But I remember a few months back, he was sitting with both parties, and he was talking about a bill of love, right? Like he was saying a bill of love that would help these DACA kids. He promised to help them. He promised Haitians he wouldn't turn their back on them. I tell you what, he turned his back on the Haitians, and the only one that got a bill of love was Stormy Daniels for $130,000, okay? So I had to go there.
Tony, but will the Democrats, there seems to be a bill now to codify DACA. Will Democrats go along with that, or is it in their best interest to leave this as a wedge issue for the midterms?
Well, I will say this. There's a new breed of Republicans, and I'm going to try and be magnanimous here. So you've mentioned in the past there's some conservatives that understand all these needs, that they need workers, let's work these students. But you also have pointed out that there's a certain segment that is totally trying to appeal to the xenophobic tendencies in some folks, right? So I mentioned that only because that small segment is getting all the attention and fighting for the power. I think Democrats don't know how to deal with those folks. So part of me is tempted to say Democrats need to have a spine, guts, and stick to their morals and values and really define both parties. Making sure that there's not any confusion. They need to come in and say, no, we're demanding that you help these folks this way so that they can define themselves as that party.
You know, that may mean that we don't get a compromise on DACA because the Democrats want to leave this, you know, for the midterms, and that worries me because we're talking about people's lives. Granted, the Republicans have been, you know, certainly the party that has used immigration as a wedge issue more than the Democrats, but I do worry that with regard to DACA that maybe Democrats won't be ready to deal because initially, if they would have taken his offer for 1.3 million DACA kids in exchange for the wall, they should have jumped at that deal. I mean, granted, he never offered that deal. He wanted the wall and the end of chain migration, which was a problem. But I think Democrats need to engage him, and certainly Latino Democrats need to hold the party accountable for a solution. I mean, we can't keep kicking this issue down the road for another year. I mean, we're talking about people's lives, and I know DACA kids, their lives are in turmoil right now, and it's not a way to live.
Well, I mean, I know I was reading your favorite book, Fire and Fury by Wolf. So I was reading it where they break down that basically the architects of this were Bannon and other folks who are xenophobic, and they said, here's how you're going to win. Hit this immigration stuff hard and go back to it again and again and again. I bring it up, too, because here we are trying to be rational about this, and there may not be rational resolutions to this because it is a fight for power. And at the end of the day, it's going to be, okay, what are the secret agendas that folks are going for? And the tragedy of it all is that there's families really suffering from it. So I think
I got to get a copy of that book, by the way, because my message, though, to Donald Trump, if you're listening, is your base is already with you. You yourself said that you could kill somebody, shoot somebody in Central Park, and nothing would happen to you. I happen to agree with you. Your base ain't going anywhere. The rest of the country wants you to lead on immigration. You've shown some glimmers of hope, or at least some rhetoric that you want to do the right thing on immigration. Lead, because your base ain't going to go anywhere. Where are they going to go? But, I mean, I didn't know that that strategy was outlined in the book, but he certainly seems to be following that bang-in playbook. And it may have won in 2016. It's not going to win in 2018. Certainly not going to work in 2020. This guy needs more friends, not less friends.
And I think at the end of the day, too, I'll give credit where credit is due. If he does lead on this, I will give him credit for that. And I think right now, Texas, although the rest of the country may not realize it, it's up in play. So it's theoretical
Not really
at the national, it's theoretical at the national level. Here locally, you're going to see the Latino vote come through. And one easy way to get them to not vote for you is to appear anti-immigrant, which is what it appears like.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Great show.
Great show. Hey, you've crossed over to the other side.